Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we started working on updating our world scene to have a new menu that's going to allow us to save our game. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as a complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. Alright, so now we have our basic menu in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on updating our menu to have our options that are available to the player. And so we'll be adding some new properties to our menu class to track which options are available. And we'll be creating text game objects for those options, and we'll be adding them into our menu container. So go ahead and do this. What we're going to do is let's come over to our menu class. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define the options that we'll be displaying in our menu. So to go ahead and do this, we're going to go ahead and create an object to track all these values. And so what we'll do is let's jump over to our direction file real quick. Let's copy that block of code, and we're going to go ahead and paste it. And so for our options, basically, we're going to go ahead and use the same pattern where we create our object with our enum values, and then we'll go ahead and create a type for this. And so for our values, what we'll have is we're going to have what's called the monster dex. So this is like the encyclopedia that shows all the available monsters in the game with their details. We're going to have monsters, which represents your party of your monsters that you currently have with you. We'll go ahead and we'll have our inventory, so our bag. And then we'll add in our option for saving. And then finally, we're going to have the options. So we'll be able to go to our options menu from our game. And then we'll also have exit if we want to close our menu. So we'll go ahead and do options. And let's go ahead and do exit. Then what we'll do for each of these, we just need to update our values. And then we're going to go ahead and update our object name. So instead of direction, this is going to be menu options. And we'll go ahead and update our type definition. So we'll have menu options, and we'll update our enum value. All right, so now we have our available options. We need to add some properties to our class to keep track of these. And so what we'll do is make a new property. We're going to call this available menu options. And for our type, this is going to be an array of our menu options. And so what we'll do is we're going to do menu options. We'll have our array. And then we're going to need a property to go ahead and track our text game objects that are available. So what we'll do is we'll add a private property. We'll do menu options text game objects. And what we'll do is we're just going to copy this. And this will be a text game object, and we'll have an array. And then we're also going to need to know which option is currently selected from our menu. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll go selected menu option index. And then we'll have selected menu option, which will be our selected option based on that index. And so for our types, what we'll do is go ahead and paste that. Our index will be a number, and then this will be menu options. So what we'll do is down our constructor, we'll go ahead and add in our initial values. And so we're going to have this, we'll have our available menu options. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to start off with just our save option and our exit option. And then that way, as we add new functionality to our game, we can just add these options to here. And so we'll have our menu options, exit. And then for our text game objects, we're just going to have menu option text game objects will be an empty array. We'll do our selected menu option index, and we're going to go ahead and set this equal to 0. And then that way we start at the top of our list. All right, so next what we're going to do is we need to go ahead and create our text game objects. So what we'll do is after we create our container, what we'll do is we'll update menu container with menu options. And so to go ahead and do this, we're going to go ahead and loop over our available menu options. So we'll do for let I equal 0. Do I is less than our available menu options dot length, and we will increment I to go ahead and loop through them. So then what we need to do is we need to create a text game object, and we need to calculate the Y value of where we want to place our object based on which index of this loop it is. And so what we're going to do is we'll do const Y, we'll set equal to 10 plus 50 pixels times I, and then that way we'll move our object down, and we'll add in our padding so we can position it correctly. So then what we can do is we can do a new variable. We're going to do const text object equals this, our scene dot add text, And then for our X value, we'll go ahead and do 40 plus this padding. And then for our Y value, we'll use our calculated Y value. And then for our text string, this is going to be our available menu options with our I index. And then we need to go ahead and add in our styling for our text game object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference a new variable we've not created yet, and we'll just do menu text style. So then what we'll do is after we create our game object, we're going to go ahead and push this into our array, and we'll add it to our container. And so we'll do this, our menu options text game objects dot push, and we will do our text object. And then we'll do this, our container dot add, and our text game object. So then we need to go ahead and define our font styling. So let's go ahead and open up our options scene. And what we'll do is we're just going to copy our text configuration there. We'll come up to the top of our menu class, and let's go ahead and add in that object. We'll go ahead and update our name to match our new variable. Let's go ahead and add in our import. And for our styling, we'll go ahead and do white, but we're going to bump up our font size to be 32 pixels. So now if we come back to our scene, if we press the enter key, we should see our two options appear, and we can see our save and our exit. And so what we can see is our exit is outside our container, and one of our to-dos was we want to update the overall height of our container to be dynamic based on our options. So what we'll do is let's come back to our code, and for our to-do here, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and after our padding, we're just going to go ahead and do add, and we'll do this, our available menu options dot length, and we're going to times this by 50. So then back in our scene, if we press the enter key, we'll see now our menu is updated and our height is dynamic based on our options. So let's go ahead and get rid of that to do. All right, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a getter for our selected menu option. And what this is going to be used for is when we add our input handling from our world scene and pass it to our menu, when we press the space key, we're going to need to know which menu option is currently selected. And then that way we can navigate to the appropriate scene. And so we'll have get selected menu option, and we're going to return this, our selected menu option. And what we'll do is just throw on our type, and this is going to be our menu options. And then one other thing we'll do is down in our hide method, what we want to do is reset our menu option index, and then that way when we reopen our menu, we'll be back up at the top. And so we're just going to do this, our selected menu option index will set to 0. And then one minor change we're going to do is up in our constructor, instead of calling isVisible and we're going to set equal to false, we're just going to go ahead and call our hide method. And then that way our container will still be false, but it's also going to reset everything else tied to it. So now that we have our options showing in our menu, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an input cursor to know which option was currently selected. And then we're going to start adding in our player input handling. And so what we'll do is up in our constructor, we're going to go ahead and add player input cursor. And for this, we're going to go ahead and create an image game object. So what we'll do is do this. We'll do our user input cursor. We're going to set that equal to this, our scene, add, and we'll do image for an image game object. We're going to go ahead and do 20 plus our padding. And then for our Y value, what we'll do is we'll do 28 plus this padding. And we're going to go ahead and use our UI asset keys, and we'll want our white cursor. So then what we'll do is let's go ahead and add this property to our class. And so this is just going to be an image game object. So I'm just going to copy this type. We'll throw it in here, and we'll change this to image. And then back down our constructor, after we create our game object, we're going to go ahead and modify our scales. We'll do this, do our user input cursor, and we're going to call set scale, and we're going to go ahead and do 2.5, just make it bigger. And then we're going to go ahead and add that to our container. So we'll do this container, add, and our new user input cursor game object. So now back in our scene, what should happen is when we first open our menu, we should see our cursor next to our option. So to go ahead and start handling input, what we need to do is we need to make a new public method that's going to allow us to pass the input from our world scene to our menu, and then that way we can move our game objects around and update our selected index. So after our hide method, what we're going to do is make a new method called handle player input, and we're going to have one parameter, it'll be input. And so this is going to be our OK button, cancel, or our direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in our type definition real quick. And so for our parameter of input, it's going to be OK or cancel. So similar like what we did in our battle scene, like when we press the space key, we'll have the OK input. If we hit shift, it'll be the cancel input to go back. And then finally our direction if it's an arrow key. And so if our input is cancel, we want to go ahead and hide our menu. And so we're going to do if our input equals cancel. We're going to go ahead and call this, and we're going to go and call our hide method, and we'll go ahead and return early. If our input is okay, all right, and then what we'll want to do is if the OK button was pressed, what we'll want to do is have different logic depending on which option is currently selected in our menu. So as an example, if it's exit, we'll go ahead and hide our menu. If it's save, then we're going to go ahead and start saving our data. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to make a new method to go ahead and have this logic. So we're going to call this handle selected menu option, and we'll go ahead and return after that. And what we'll do is we're just going to go ahead and add that method to the bottom of our class. And for now, we won't have it do anything. All right, and then if it's not the OK or cancel button, we need to go ahead and handle when our arrow keys are pressed. And so to do that, we're going to go ahead and add a new method for that as well. So we'll do move menu cursor, and we'll go ahead and pass our input to that method. And so I'm just going to throw in a comment. We'll do update selected menu option based on player input. And what we'll do is let's add that new method as well to the bottom of our class, and we'll have our parameter of input. So then what we'll do is let's go ahead and add in our type definition for our method. So we're just going to copy this. We're going to paste it above moveMenuCursor, and we're just going to get rid of OK and cancel because it'll just be direction. Let's copy this, and we'll just go ahead and have it return void. All right, so for our two methods, first we'll go ahead and start with our moveMenuCursor method. And what we want to do here is we need to update our selected menu option index. And what we're going to want to do is based on the direction that's pressed, up or down, we're going to go ahead either increment or decrement that index. And then we're going to have a safeguard where if we go outside the bounds of our currently available options, we're going to go ahead and loop it to the other side. And so what that means is like if I'm on the save option here, if I press the up arrow key, instead of being out of bounds on our index, we're just going to go ahead and reset our value. So that way we're on the exit option. Likewise, if we're on exit, we're going to loop back to save. And so to go ahead and make this happen, what we're going to do is we're going to add in a switch statement, and we're going to go ahead and do a switch statement on our input. And then what we need to do is add our cases, and so we're going to do direction, and we'll do up. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a break statement, copy this, and we'll go ahead and add in our direction down. All right, and then what we'll do is we're just going to do our remaining options, and so we're going to have left. Let's copy this, and we'll do our right and our none. So we'll have right, and we'll have none. And then what we'll do is we'll add in our default with our exhaustive guard. And we'll go ahead and pass in our input. And then real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename this to be direction, since that's what we're actually handling here. So if the direction is up, we're going to decrement our index. We're going to do this, our selected menu option index. We'll do minus equals 1. And then we need to add our safeguard. So if our selected menu option index is less than 0, we're going to go ahead and loop it back to the end. And so we'll do this. Our selected menu option index is going to be equal to our available menu options. We're going to go ahead and grab our length. And then from our length, we need to subtract 1. So that we have a valid index. So then we're going to copy these lines of code, and in direction down, we want to do the inverse. So we're going to go ahead and increment, and if our index is greater than our length minus 1, so I'm just going to copy this, then we want to go ahead and just reset this back to 0. And then if it's left, right, or none, then we're not going to go ahead and update our option. So then after this, what we're going to do is we need to go ahead and update our game object's position for our cursor. And so we'll need to calculate our X and Y value based on what option's currently selected. And so what we'll do is I'm going to make two variables. We're going to do X, we'll do 20 plus this dot padding. And then for our y value, this is going to be 28 plus this padding plus this selected menu option index, and we'll multiply by 50. And then we just need to go ahead and call set position. So we're going to do this, our user input cursor, set position, and we'll pass in those x and y values to update our game object's position. And so if we want to actually test our logic, what we need to do is come back to our world scene, and when we handle our player input, we're going to need to pass this to our menu. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come down to where our menu is visible. And in our to-do, we're going to go ahead and call our new method. So we're just going to add a safety check where if our selected direction does not equal our direction.none, then we're going to go ahead and call this our menu and handle player input. And we'll do our selected direction. All right, and then we should be able to go ahead and test. If we come back to our world scene, if we go ahead and open our menu and press up or down, we can see our logic's working, but we have a few bugs. And so the first one is our player is actually moving when we have our menu open, and we don't want that to happen. The second one is our key presses are firing too fast because we have the logic for checking to see if the key's held. And so now we're passing that multiple times to our menu. When instead we just want to know if it's only been pressed one time and then pass that to our menu. So to go ahead and address these issues, what we need to do is we need to know if our direction key is being pressed down and if it's actually being pressed just one time. Then that way we can support our existing logic and our new logic. So we're going to go ahead and rename our selected direction to be selected direction held down. And what we'll do is we're just going to update our references in our code. And then what we're going to do is we're also going to make a new variable, do const selected direction, and we'll do pressed once, and we'll set that equal to this, our controls, get direction key just pressed, and we'll go ahead and pass that to our logic down here. All right, and then for the other part of the bug, what we need to do is we need to update our logic for checking if player input is locked, and what we want to do is not only if our dialog UI is visible, what we want to do is we want to check to see if our menu is actually visible. And so we're going to do this menu is visible. One other thing we're going to throw in here is we're going to check to see if our controls are locked. And so we're going to do this controls.isInput locked. And then that way, if any of these are true, then we're going to go ahead and lock our player input. And so we'll go ahead and save. So now if we come back to our world scene, if we hit our enter key, now, if we press the up or down key, our player doesn't move, and we can see our cursor moves how we expect, even if we hold the key down. All right, so while we're in here, we'll just go ahead and add in our logic for handling when the space key is pressed when our menu is open. And so what we'll do is we'll add another if statement, and we're going to do if our space key was pressed. So if this controls that was space key pressed, then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and call our method. So we're just going to copy this, and we're going to change this to be okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a to-do to handle which selected menu option was actually selected. So we're going to do to-do, handle other selected menu options. And then what we can do is let's go ahead and just get rid of this to-do. I'm just going to add some spacing between our if statements. So if we want to go ahead and test, let's come back to our menu class, and in our handle selected menu option, I'm just going to do a console log, and we'll say, okay, pressed. All right, so if we want to go ahead and test, let's come back to our scene, open our menu, and press the space key. And what we're going to see is there is no console log actually happening. So what's happening here is in our world scene, we're calling our was space key press method. And internally, we're using the phaser just down method to know when a key was pressed down. And one of the caveats with this method is you can only call it once per key press because it's only going to return true once. And so what this does, it's a mechanism to know that the key has been pressed and we handled it, and then we have to wait for the key to be pressed again so then we can handle it a second time. And due to this, we need to go ahead and add a variable to track if this was pressed since we referenced this twice. And so what I'm going to do is we'll make a new variable, which we can call const was space key pressed, and we'll set it equal to this controls dot was space key pressed. And then in our two checks where we use that, we're just going to go ahead and replace that with our variable here. Go ahead and save. Now in our world scene, if we press the space key while our menu is open, we can see our console log. All right, so now we validated our handle selected menu option methods being invoked. We actually need to add in our logic. And so what we want to do is we just want to take our selected menu option index and then update our selected menu option based on the option that was selected. And so to do that, all we need to do is we'll do this. We're going to do our selected menu option. We're going to set it equal to this, our available menu options. And then we're going to do this, our selected menu option index. So then what we need to do is back in our world scene, after we've updated our selected menu option, then we need to go ahead and do our business logic to do our various things. So for example, if we select save, we want to save our data and let the player know. We select exit, we go ahead and hide our menu. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is in our to do, we're going to go ahead and check to see which option was pressed. And so we're going to do if this menu dot selected menu option equals save. We want to go ahead and use our data manager, and we're going to call this save data method. And then we're just going to show a message to the player. And so we're going to do this, our dialog UI, and we're going to do show dialog modal. And for our message, we're going to do game progress has been saved. And then what we'll do is we'll do an else if. And so else if our selected menu option equals exit. And if exit selected, we just want to go ahead and hide our menu. This will do our menu and we'll call our hide method. All right, so if we go ahead and save, we should be able to test our changes. Let's come to our world scene and let's open our menu. And so if we hit save, we can see our text about saving our menu. However, our menu stays open. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is back in our world scene. Let's go ahead and call our hide method after we click the save button. So now if we go ahead and open our menu, we hit save, we hide our menu, we see our text, and we save our game. And so if we go ahead and hit exit, our menu exits. Oh, however, our cursor isn't updated when we close our menu. So to go ahead and fix that, let's come back to our logic for hiding. What we're going to go ahead and do is after we set our index, we're going to call our moveMenuCursor method. So then that way we can update the position. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do this, and we'll go ahead and pass in direction none. And real quick, what we'll do is we're going to make one small change to our moveMenuCursor method. If it's left or right, we're going to go ahead and return. And if it's none, then we'll go ahead and do break. And so what we're doing is we're just returning early if it's left or right because we don't actually need to update our position, so we don't need to call that method. All right, so now if we go ahead and test, let's go ahead and select exit. Our menu closes, and if we open our menu, we can see our options back up at the top. All right, and to go ahead and test our save functionality, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and move our player, hit save, we'll see our dialog, and if we refresh our scene, our player should be in the position of where they last were when we saved our game. And so like if we move and refresh, we should go back to right where we saved. Nice. All right, so one other quick bug we're going to fix is while our player is moving, they have the option to go ahead and open their menu, and we want to go ahead and prevent that and wait till the player is actually done moving. So to fix that, back in our world scene, we're going to do in our check where we check if our enter key was pressed. Then we're also going to add a check to make sure our player's not moving. So this player that is moving. So if it's not moving, then we can go ahead and open our menu. And so now if we move and try opening our menu, it doesn't work. All right, with that actually brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to continue working on our menu. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect our options data to our menu so we can change the color depending on what was selected from our options data. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phase 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.